Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all so much for coming along. If you're hearing my voice today thinking, what's going on? I'm supposed to be listening to Tracey and Adam. Then I promise you that I will be incredibly quick in kicking off the webinar today. And that's mainly because I know full well the quality that you're going to get from Tracey today. I was just so pumped, so excited when Tracey agreed to come on and to provide some of her wisdom to the Real Schools community, because I just know how valuable that wisdom is. Tracey and I go back a bit. We go back a few years now when I first stumbled across Tracey's work, and I'll admit, when I first saw it, I thought, oh no, she does collaboration and she does culture, and that's what I do as well. Maybe she'll be better than me. But then we both realised pretty quickly that there's so much overlap in this space, and there's so much to know, that we both sort of are tackling the same problem from a completely different direction. And the work that Tracey does in able to show people how to collaborate authentically, to not just make it another little piece of teacher jargon on the edu landscape, is something that I just rate so incredibly highly. So I'm very, very excited to have Tracey here today. Trace, can you hear me?
I can, Ads, I can, and I'm so rapt to be here, and very nervous, can I just say? Just a little bit nervous here with all your crew.
I think it's the webinar thing. It can be a little bit daunting first time when you can't see the faces of the people you're speaking to, but I can assure you that people that come to the Real Schools webinars, and we had more than 90 people register for today, I can assure you that they're all really nice people. You're in for a good time. Hey, before I hand over presentation to Tracey, I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, just like all the other webinars, you can interact. So Tracey's got her eye on the control panel, and if you put your hand up, she's able to have that same facility to unmute you. Always wanting to point out that any questions you have, I'm sure, will not only be of value to you, but also to all of the other people who are in the room today. And also, if you're feeling a little shy, you can use the question box. Now, you would use the question box if you've got a question that you'd like to ask Tracey about what she's presenting. And also, I guess even if you're having a little couple of tech issues, if you can't see or hear anything that's going on, pop them in there, because the amazing Chris is also in the background, our business manager, and she's great with those techie solutions that you might need to be able to move forward. Now, before I do hand over, two quick apologies. First of all, and the apology part of it, I suppose, is that I need to sneak off. I'm with a school today, so I'm shattered because I'm going to be one of the people today who's not showing up to the webinar and who's going to watch the recording later on. Good part is I'll get it before everybody else, so I get to catch up on Trace's wisdom. And the second thing that I wanted to point out is this is our final webinar for the year. So I want to thank everybody who's come along to all the webinars this year. They've been increasingly popular. We're looking at what our options are for next year, if we continue to provide webinar service to people, or perhaps if we move into the podcast space is something that we're giving some thought to. So feel free to drop us a line and tell us which one you think we should be getting stuck into as well. But look, I guess what I want to do is hand over to you, Tracey, with again an enormous thank you. I really appreciate you doing this today. I know that you're going to be of enormous value to everybody who's here, and now I think the best thing for me to do is get out of the way and make you a presenter. So let's make sure technology works brilliantly, because that's
great.
What it will always do for us, because technology makes life so much better for everybody.
And thanks, Adam. I hope you have a great workshop wherever we're off to. Let's see if I can make this work. Yes, want to set cursor. I'm going to play, and I'm hoping that you've all got that sitting there. And by Adam.
I can see it beautifully. Seamless, like we promised.
Seamless. I've got to tell you, I do feel like I'm in my last year of Teachers College at Marysville Primary School, and John, the head teacher, said to me on my very first morning, "Here you go, here's the class." And he left me to it, and I'm going,
I'm going to walk out the door and go and make myself a coffee and buy a pie from the canteen. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, thanks, Adam. Hey, and hi to everyone. It's great to be here with the Real Schools crew. I've got some thinking for you today that is about how do we lead these cultures so that we have that really deep learning going on within our school. And what I'd like you to do is to sort of pose some questions to yourself today, I suppose, questions that you can ponder on beyond today. We know that there is no quick fix for creating collaborative cultures. what we also know is there is brilliant work going on everywhere around Australia and beyond Australia in terms of building these cultures. So I've been lucky enough, Adam's been lucky enough to go around to schools, to go around to education systems and be able to look at what the great stuff is. So I'm going to do a little bit of that today, having a look at what there is. So I wanted to click off with a poll if I could, because I would love to know who is here. So the poll that I'm after is, who are you? You know, are you a principal? Are you a school leader? Are you a teacher? Are you part of a leadership team that's sitting around having a listen to this today? So that I can get a bit of a sense of who is in the room. And it looks like we've got a really good spread of people right throughout a school, from education support, teacher, school leader, principal, and leadership team sitting there as well. So thank you. Thanks for giving me that insight. I'm going to close that poll now. That just gives me some good results. I'll just show you those so you can see where we're sitting at. Fantastic. I am going to be absolutely looking at how we lead this culture, and I believe that anyone in a school has got a really big really big part to play in terms of creating collaborative culture. It doesn't just come from leadership, and yet leadership is really critical to it being in place. So what do we know about collaboration? You know, we know we want people to collaborate to improve teacher practice. We know we want people to learn with impact. How do we get the learning in the classroom really having major impact for our kids? But sometimes it's as simple as we just want to get the staff dishwasher emptied and, you know, have people just working together working together in a space where everyone's committed, everyone's thriving, everyone gets along. And we're doing some really good stuff. And let's face it, these days in education, we are always being challenged around this space of not doing everything like it's always been done, but creating this new paradigm where we're really arming our students for the complex world in which they live in and the one they're going to move into. So that we've always done it this way. I can't tell you how many times people nod their heads in agreement when I raise this as something we've just got to push against and actually always be asking ourselves, why are we doing that? What is it that's going on? Is it what's great about what we've always done? That's critical. But the second part to that is, does what we've always been doing serve us? And is it serving our kids? That's the most important question. And so getting into that mindset where that's actually the way we work is always challenging. That question is something that I think we should always have on the top of our agenda. So a question to you as you sit there listening to this is, you know, is there some stuff in your school that you've always done it this way and people have forgotten to ask why? People have forgotten to delve into, is it getting us the impact and the outcomes that we're after? Or are we just doing it, you know, because it's one person's baby that they've done for years, and whilst they love doing it, we've actually got so much other stuff that we need to be focusing on, and we need to let things go and get dropped. One of the real challenges I think that any staff team has is, how do we manage the amount of balls that we've got in the air? And so I think sometimes we just need to be tough and actually put some of the balls down. So the question I wanted to ask you around that is also, you know, what would you do in your school if you were bolder? What is it that when you look at your school, when you think of your school, you get really excited to be able to say, wow, imagine if we could do that. And for me, creating a collaborative culture allows us to do that bold action, take those bold steps, push the paradigm and really shake things up a bit. So what would you do if you were bolder is a great question, I think, to ask a leadership team, to ask your team. I often ask it when schools are going through strategic review. You know, where is it you're at now and what would you do if you were bolder? Because how about you create the culture and the context where you could actually move forward to that. Here's a little bit more of a, a serious question for right now. What results do you want? For next year that require deep collaboration? They require people to come out of the classroom and work together. And that's really what we're all about when we're talking about collaboration. I think in schools, in many ways, we've been the masters of our own silos. We've been silo architects, and I love the work that's going on in schools where they're breaking down the silos of the classroom walls and really doing different things to give our students really authentic learning, collaboration, and lifting the lid, I suppose, on where kids learn and where we learn as staff as well. So what is it you're needing people to deeply collaborate on? Today I'd like to take you through, a real look at what is authentic collaboration and give you a bit of a ladder to put yourself on and your school on of where you think you're at in terms of collaboration, and give you some lenses to be able to work at to say, okay, if we're here, this is where we might put our energy to be able to increase our collaborative culture. To go to just some of the gurus, let's kick off with the gurus. I love Andy Hargrave's and Michael O'Connor's version of collaborative professionalism, and this came out in some of the Qatar papers at the end of last year. And, it is about transforming teaching and learning, and I think we need to be really rigorous around that. I think, we should be really open to the fact that if we're collaborating together, it should be absolutely impacting on our teaching and learning, on our relationships with our students, with our relationships with each other, with our community, so that we can, that's a great why in this statement, so that all students can develop fulfilling lives of meaning, purpose and success. And so both Hargraves and O'Connor believe that we need to be moving from the space of, yes, we as professionals, we need to collaborate, to a deeper, more embedded belief that collaborative professionalism should be a hallmark of everyone that works in a school. But my very, very most favourite quote is from Dylan William from the University of London, and I think this is a beautiful quote. It echoes a lot of the challenges that I find when I work with schools. I do believe we have this inbuilt fear that this is about me not being good enough as a teacher. And so therefore all this collaboration stuff is about, oh, I'm not good enough and I've got to improve. But, the cultures that are really high performance in this space, they just knock that out of the way and go, hey, this is not about us improving, it's about us being even better. And I love this as a statement. And I do believe that there is no limit to what we can achieve if we really are in that space of learning. It's a learning culture that we're creating within our staff. Here's my collaborative continuum. It's actually not for a download. I probably need to send that to the wonderful Chris and she'll download this for you. A lot of places use this to just check in where they are in terms of their collaboration. Down the bottom, corrosion and coexistence. Unfortunately, that still goes on. Sometimes there is a lot of ego going on in some places and high distrust where collaboration is just not possible because there is just that lack of professional trust or even personal trust to be able to work together. We've broken down a lot of silos over the last years to move from coexistence so that we don't have, the science teacher teaching year 8 in one desk in the staff room right next to the next science teacher teaching year 8 who never speak to each other. We've been bashing that down, I think, and sometimes it is a bit of a bash down and other times people are just so ready to talk with each other. And again, in some schools this happens a lot. In other schools, it's a work in progress, and I think we've got to understand that we're all on a different journey. We're all on different spaces. You'll even have different teams, I know, within your team, within your school, that they're great. They work together. They share resources. They're at that coordination, cooperation space. Co-creation is really where I believe we need to move to, and that's when what we create is something more because we're at the table together. And co-creation is a most amazing space to be in as an educator, I think, because instead of having only my own teaching and learning strategies in my backpack, I get to add a whole heap that I've co-created with my colleagues to address the challenges in the classroom. And the very top one, collective capacity, I think that's what we're all about in education when it comes to collaborating together. I do a lot of work in collaboration across sectors, and I think we're way ahead of so many other sectors because we really believe that building collective capacity of us as educators will get us better outcomes, and we know that the evidence absolutely says that. So at the very pinnacle, it's about a rising tide lifts all boats, and so I think that's really important for us to remember that if you're sitting there as a leadership team, I think our responsibility to each other is to help lift each other's leadership skills. If I'm a grade 3-4 teacher, I think my responsibility is to contribute to lifting every teacher in the school, our capacity. So you can have a talk about that. You don't want to stay in co-creation all the time because it's, sometimes you just need to go off and coordinate stuff. But I would get you to perhaps think about what are some really critical pieces that we need to come together and talk with each other about to make sure we're getting the outcomes that we're after. So for me, this is the statement that I tend to use when people are talking about collaboration. It's learning out loud, I think, in our education context, which, I once had someone who said, I'm an introverted teacher and this is why I hate collaboration. And I think that's really resonated with me around the need to be able to create environments where everyone thrives. And so being able to share your thinking, everyone's capable of that, but often those who with more extroversion, get that stuff out a lot easier, can tend to dominate. So I think that comes down to what I call the environment, the moments that we create, and we'll talk about that shortly. But I think learning out loud is a good way to look at it. Are we articulating our beliefs? Are we articulating the things that drive what we do as a school? What is it that we're doing? What am I learning off you? What are you learning off me? And if we can come away from any time we're together collaborating thinking, what did I just learn? I think that's a bonus that we can aim for. The question I'd like you to have a think about is, what do you reckon stops people from doing that authentic collaboration? What is it that makes people either shy right away from it or not attempt it at all, or maybe it doesn't work very well? So I'm wondering whether anyone can write in the question area any answers that they've got. What is it that stops people from authentically collaborating? Can anyone throw up any ideas? I've opened the question, so if you want to put it in the question section, and then I can let people know. I need some elevator music. I won't say your name. Fear is not, oh, yep, great. Fear of not being as wise. Fear of judgment. Fear of exposing what they don't know. Yep. Personalities. Lack of trust. Not having a shared understanding of why we're doing it. Oh yeah. Time. Yep. Fear of change. Relational trust is not there. You betcha. They've well said, everyone. That's really hit the nail on what I've found. I've been doing this for over 13 years, and I usually ask that question whenever I work with a school. Time is the one that comes up the most, for sure. And yet we know that systemically we've done a lot of work to create time and to be more purposeful. So I think that's one that's certainly on the way in terms of, I always remember a great collaborative leader saying to me one day, Tracey, this is not more work, this is the work. And I think that's really true, because if we're wanting to constantly hone what we're doing in the classroom, in the learning, in the interactions with the students, then learning how to do it better is absolutely the work. So here's what I've found. People want systems that support opportunity for collaboration. So, what have we got set up? How do our timetables work so that people can get together? And then that trust that a number of people named is huge. Build trust between staff, between leadership and staff. How do we get rid of the us and them? My second book, Glue, is all about the glue of trust and the glue of collaboration. Because when I was doing this work, my first book, The Buzz, which is what we're looking at strongly today, is what are the pillars we need to be in place to have high collaboration happening. If we don't have the staff gluing, the trust gluing us together, people are not going to take risks. And so that creating safety, how do we do that to voice opinions and ideas? One of the strongest messages I'm getting through from my diagnostics is that people feeling that they don't necessarily have a voice around the table. Meeting purpose that came up in the comments from the group as well. Increase the clarity. Why are we here? What's the direction? What's the role of the people around the table? What's the meeting purpose? If you haven't listened to Adam's August webinar with Donna McGeorge, who is a brilliant 25-minute meeting clarity extraordinaire, I would encourage you to have a listen to that, because she's got some great ideas around making sure that you have got purposeful meetings happening. And that goes with the processes in the meeting. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon, because that's again about the environment that we create. How do we have more deep discussion of teaching and learning? My sense is for a lot of people, they come to meetings and they just get overwhelmed by people talking at them. So there's a lot of blah, 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 blah. And we might not think as leaders that it's blah, 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 but after a day of teaching, it sort of might sound like that. And failure. So that fear that was mentioned by a number of people, being okay as individuals and as a team with failure. It's probably some of the most important work that I think I've been doing with teams now is how do we move out of this fear of failure, judgment and shame? If we want to be learners, we need to create this space where, mucking up is okay. And I know for a lot of us, we like to get things right. And as teachers, we like to be right. And I think that in this new paradigm of the world, we've got to let go of a whole heap of stuff. And I think as leaders, if you're a leader sitting in this space, modelling that is really critical. How do we recode it? How do we get people having conversations about what learning really looks like? I always think, formative assessment in a way is checking out our failures. Formative assessment looks at what are the kids, I've taught some stuff. What have the kids learned from that stuff? Now, the stuff that they haven't learned or they haven't quite got, well, I could look at that and go, well, that might have been, that was just, I didn't do the thing that reached that child, so how am I going to shift? So in a way, responsive teaching, we're good at tweaking, moving, but when it comes to doing it with our colleagues, there seems to be this block. So, so I think this is a big piece, and I would really encourage you to talk to your teams about this. What is it that we fear? And the fear of judgment and not looking as smart as someone else and all the things that, our itty-bitty committee in our heads that says I'm not good enough are some of the things that we're trying to actually deal with. And this is the human condition. This is the humanness, I think, of collaboration that I think we need to. Yes, we can have all the structures in the world, but unless we deeply connect to each other about this, it's going to be hard. So one of the things that's really interesting for me when I talk with people around how do we create this great space of deep collaboration and voice is to identify what are some of the things that shut down voice. Sometimes we can walk into a collaborative space where we really want to hear everyone's voices, and instead what we have is we have someone enlightening us. And we have the person at the table that knows everything. They come in as the expert, and unfortunately they shut other people down. And this can be a default position. Sometimes if we've got expertise, people just look to us for the answers and they don't contribute because, hey, I know that Tracey's going to give the answer. And so we can almost get boxed into that label. But if we don't make sure our processes are right, The enlighteners tend to dominate the show. So another question, how are your meetings, how are your collaborations creating the environment where you hear from around the table, not just from a couple? And that comes down to our good planning around our collaborations. So we've got the enlightener. Then there's also the waste of space. You might recognise a waste of space. Really skilled at maybe having their phone underneath the desk and doing a bit of sneaky texting under the desk. Perhaps they come totally unprepared or 10 minutes late, serial late person, and just sit there and don't really contribute. In fact, in some extreme cases, really the energy that's exuded from the person around the table is infecting other people. So we need to create this culture where that's not going on. But let's add a D to that, waste, because I think sometimes we also have wasted spaces. We have people that come to the table and no one asks them a question, or there's a little bit of a hierarchy of you're just a grad or you're just a third year. And I think sometimes we've got to be really clearer about the fact that, you know, these people coming into our schools are full of A, energy, B, amazing ideas, and C, they've often been exposed to leading edge thinking in university more than we have. And so creating that environment where their voice is really important is paramount to creating this collaborative culture. I think also sometimes wasted spaces happen because of dynamics that are going on in the room where people don't feel safe. So that psychological safety is really critical. Then I think you've also got the vacuum cleaners, and the vacuum cleaners come around and they hoover everything up. They go, right, that's a great template. Can you forward that to me? Oh, I love that. Can I borrow that book? What a great way to do it. Fantastic. Write down notes, but never bring anything themselves. So the vacuum cleaners are excellent at hoovering up everyone's ideas, not so good at bringing them to the table. And sometimes that's just about, you know, contribution, slackness, overwhelm. So sometimes I'm just not in a space where I can do that, you know, and we've got to be really careful that we support people when they're there. And sometimes it's I don't feel like what I bring is of the standard that's suitable. And so creating that, that's okay. Whatever you bring, we take with open arms is an important step for us to have, I think. And then last off, there's the leaf blower. Blows away any good idea that comes up. Oh no, we did that in 2004. Yeah, and we did that in 1994. You know, just create that environment where any ideas are just blasted away. So for me, where we're aiming for is a master stock, you know, and I worked for a couple of years when I left schools in an Asian restaurant, and we had a beautiful master stock. And the key to a great Asian master stock is hot, sweet, spicy and salty. And I think what we're aiming for when we've got collaboration is everyone's voice contributing to that really rich master stock. So a question to have a reflection on, if you're taking down these questions, is how rich is the master stock within our collaborative teams? Or is it a bit thin? Is it, you know, so maybe people are so not wanting to step on anyone else's toes that you don't have rich debate. Everyone's very nice. Maybe there's just only a couple of people that run the race and the other people don't feel like they have a voice. Interestingly, self-awareness is critical here, because I've worked with people who've said, oh, everyone has a voice here. And then you can absolutely see people at the same table sort of go, oh, I don't think so. Yeah, our levels of self-awareness are critical. And what we need underneath this is, you know, that leadership that leads to psychological safety. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about psychological safety, I encourage you to go and watch Amy Edmondson, her TED Talk on psychological safety. It's 11 minutes long. It's a great one to show at a staff meeting and ask people to reflect on how safe are we to be able to take risks, to jump off the diving board, if you like. You know, a little while ago I was watching some kids at a big pool with a diving board, and there was 2 kids, and they're probably about 7, and one went up and she went to the end of the diving board. She was on about the 5-metre board, and it was really super wobbly, and she got pretty scared, and her dad came up and he was helping her and just giving her, you know, encouragement from the sidelines. She went out a couple of times, decided she couldn't do it, but then just leapt from the concrete the concrete ledge into the pool. Then this other kid came up and he just went straight on to the end of the diving board, bounced a few times and jumped in. And I think that's what happens with our teams. There's some people who they need a lot of support. So what are the safety nets that you've got in place for people to be able to feel like they're really contributing, that they're safe, that their voice matters, that they're able to be fully involved and fully immersed in the whatever it is that you're learning about and working together on. And so curiosity, really critical for psychological safety. Seeing things as a learning issue, not an execution issue. So it's a learning, you know, let's frame it as a learning. And also modelling it is just, you know, modelling that fallibility, being okay with saying, hey, I'm learning too. So important. Because we are shifting the status quo. In every school, we're shifting the status quo. We're shifting the status quo for every student, and we're shifting the status quo from not just doing what the generations before have done, but into completely new territory, always as we move into the future. And when it comes to leaders, so, you know, with the leadership in the room at the moment, you will probably be very familiar with this Michael Fullan quote. And I totally agree with it. You know, I don't know whether any of you have been in environments where the only time you will see the leaders is to introduce someone to the group that they're going to learn with, and then they disappear. And whilst first to know that the leadership roles are totally overloaded, there's a lot to do, putting learning with our teams, I think, is one of the most critical ones we can do. And not all the time, but the stuff that really, really matters. How are you showing that you are learning? And I think leaders should always be learning about leading. But what else are you learning about? Here's a great couple of examples. I worked with 4 schools, and this was in Victoria, so Victorian people will recognise the word HITS at the back, which is the High Impact Teaching Strategies. We had 4 schools come together, and we did a whole lot of deep diving into the 10 strategies that are there. And I love this photo because you cannot see where any of the leaders are, but they are scattered amongst all the tables. Actually, you can see one of them looking at me taking a photo. But they were in deep, learning from people had more expertise around a teaching strategy than they might have, asking good, curious questions, learning as they went, right beside their teams. And the work that was done on that day was pivotal to them being able to really do some good, strong, collaborative learning. And getting rid of ego is another one. I just want to flick through these quickly. I was in Longreach working with Central Queensland teachers. If there's any Central Queenslanders, hi. We went to Longreach. It was just so beautiful on their oval for the dinner, the Qantas Museum in the background. But what I loved about this night, this dinner conference, was here it was the big red truck was there, and this is their trade training centre up there, and it goes around to all the high schools, and inside it is commercial kitchen where the kids all do their Certificate 2 in hospitality. They do their barista courses, and you know, this is who it's all about. Those principals, those leaders from the 4 schools came together and they said, let's not argy-bargy about where this goes, who's going to have it on their site. Let's look at what's going to make the best for our whole region and our students. And so the big red truck goes all around the place. And I think for me, it really just stood up, you know, what do we need to leave behind? We need to leave behind ego when we collaborate, and we need to leave behind being right and I. It has to move to a we. So framing this up, I want to give you a bit of a list. So this is my fave if I've worked with you before, you probably know this one. This is my fave graffiti sign of all time. And I am going to give you a list. And I've got a diagnostic that goes with this that, you know, as real school participants, you'll be able to access a 360 on your collaborative culture. This is the one I use the most. This is the one that I get people to look at. Where are you at around your collaboration? You know, right up the top, committed collaboration. I want you to think the whole school is absolutely focused. We know where we're going. We know what our big goals are. We know what we're trying to achieve. People are open to learning. They're open to people watching them teach. There's feedback. We're in a learning culture and there's a buzz. So it's absolutely the buzz that's going on. And it's not just led by the leaders. Committed collaboration is such a great space to be, and I'm really excited. I've just been with the diagnostic, you know, been identifying a couple of schools that are just flying in this space, unpacking what it is that they're doing to get there. When it comes to clarity, you know, that's the leadership team has really been embedding a whole lot of work around creating this collaborative culture, and people are moving forward. The only thing that's an area for lifting them up further is to really get more co-creation happening. So rather than the leadership leading the way, you've actually got far more of that distributed leadership happening within the classroom teacher team. In the middle, controversy and confusion. So controversy is where you actually know you've got to do some stuff. You know you need to be moving, and there's good conversations starting to happen, but it's a bit split, and sometimes there's a bit of power play that goes on with controversy in terms of we know we need to move forward on this stuff. We haven't had the conversations yet about how to get there. Confusion is when, oh, geez, we have so got to do something at our school. All the indicators would say that we've got some real challenges to deal with, but we're not sure what to do. And with confusion, it's a bit like chasing the tail. And, you know, decision making is fraught, cloudy. People haven't got clarity around what they're supposed to be doing. There's no clear vision at the other end. And down the bottom, corrosion and complacency. Now, I'm hoping that, you know, I think we're really doing a lot of good work to move, especially off corrosion. You know, great standards around what teachers should be doing, what leaders should be doing around standards, but also a greater realisation that our culture majorly impacts on our ability to be able to do the work. And complacency is just where we go, hey, you know, the way we work is okay, and why do we need to change? And yeah, I'm not really interested in really talking too much about changing my teaching and learning practice because I'm pretty okay with it. So I wanted to do a bit of a quick poll. I know that's a quick breeze through it, but I wanted to just ask you, out of those 6, where do you think your school might be at? Again, you know, this is obviously an anonymous poll, but it gives you the opportunity, and me the opportunity to say, where do you think you're at? And I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about what you can do to address it. So I've got quite a big group sitting at controversy and confusion. Okay, yep, great, alrighty. I am going to just share those so you can have a look. So we've got 13% at clarity, 50 at controversy and 38 at confusion. Fantastic. So first up, you'll see that there's a bit of a line. You'll see there's a bit of a line between complacency and confusion. Down here, there's nothing much happening. So at this one, under here, there's nothing much going on, which is why the traffic lights haven't even got a green. So the good thing is that confusion and controversy mean that there's forward momentum. So here are my little tidbits for what I would suggest you have a look at where you need to be, and how you do that is down the bottom. You know, there's got to be courage and kindness when there's any of that sort of behaviour going on. People are in that space because of some stuff that's gone on often in the past, and so we need to have that empathy for them. And then, you know, the comfort zone is we haven't got clarity on what's expected and lifting the bar of it. But here are the two that we've got: confusion bit of circling, you've got to step back, take stock and make a plan. So really get all the evidence you've got together. What is it that you are trying to achieve? You know, what's the vision that you've got for your school or for your team? What is it we're trying to achieve? And then what is it that we need to build our capacity to be able to do it? So you should always see strategically a link between what you're asking your people to work on and the big goals that you have in your strategic or your annual implementation plan, whatever it might be. But it should always be linked so that it always should come back to the impact on the students in whatever you're doing. If you're in controversy, this is where quite a lot of schools are at, and it is all about the fact that one of our biggest growth areas, I think, is how do we have good, robust debate? So we're usually pretty good at having conversations if we get along with each other or if we agree with each other. The challenge is, what do we do if we don't actually agree with each other? So I think there's capacity building around how do we help people have conversations? How do we have people have what I call authentic dialogue around that? So and it comes down to having the trust to be able to do it. So all the way up this, we've got engagement as shift going up, but really strong arrow going up is the trust that we need to build to be able to do it as well. So the 3 pillars that I'm suggesting that you look at to build up further up this ladder are keep working on that. These are the 3 pillars of the buzz. So what's the mindset of the adults in the school? We talk about growth mindset with the kids a lot. I have a real challenge around talking to kids around growth mindset when if we're stuck in, I'm not going to do that because I like the way I always do it. So I think we really need to challenge ourselves. Growth mindset, fixed mindset, they are absolutely, we move through the day between the two of them. We're not one or the other. It depends on what we value, what's important to us, things that we won't move on. You know, we can have quite a fixed mindset around things we deeply believe. And if you don't like the word growth mindset, you can use adaptive mindset, you can use learner mindset. It's a mindset that's about growth, though, and it's about learning. Compelling environment is what do we create in our meetings? Anytime we get, or not just meetings, but anytime we come together, what are the moments that we have between each other? Are they cold? Are they warm? Do we have authentic dialogue is the 3rd. So there's 3 M's to this. What's going on in our mind? What's happening in our moments? And what's happening coming out of our mouth. And when I walk into a school, I tend to really listen out for all of these, and I try to really hear what mindset can I hear. And you know, you hear it through people's language. You hear it through what are the displays up around the school. What are the interactions between teachers and students, education support staff and students? What's the interaction between each other? What's the moments that we create when we're together? You know, it can be how people look at each other in a staff room. It can be how people greet each other. I know that if you've worked with Adam for a while, you'll know that he talks about people in the office being directors of first impressions. And, you know, what's the moment that we create when we first meet people? Or we meet them on a daily basis. I always get quite shocked when people say to me, I wish people said hello to each other more around this place. So something to think about. Where would you sit when it comes to the mind? You know, on the left-hand side, this is when we're down towards the bottom. You know, when we go, I've learnt that, rather than I'm learning that, or I've learnt it and there's probably a whole lot more that I need to learn. So the right-hand side is where we want to move to. So I would get you to consider what's the learning mindset that you can hear in your teams, and is it about learning? Is it about a we? What are we trying to do? Or are people sort of still stuck back in I, which is, you know, it's ego, it's me. We're up the top. We're about what are we trying to achieve with our community, school community, and it's very much can, will. So there's a whole lot of what I call the meta language, which is about growth and doing it together. So you can just listen out for that and just test that out. Sorry, if you are in the space where you're getting new teachers in, and I know some of you are in schools where it's really hard to actually get staff on board, I think we've got to recruit for it. We've got to ask questions when we're recruiting that give insights into the type of teacher or the type of education support person that is about learning. I love this one. This is from Stonefields over in Auckland, who is a school I absolutely love. It's high committed collaboration. This is a position for a DP, for a deputy principal, and that was their ad, and I just loved it because it's about challenge, it's about imagining possibilities, it's about let's push out of our comfort zone and provocate, and I love that. So you know, are you recruiting to that high level of people that are going to, you know, challenge things? You've got to be ready for it to happen, but recruiting for it is critical. The other things that you really need to do is model it, and from a leadership perspective, if we are not modelling good debate, if we are not modelling curiosity, if we're not modelling our own learning, then people will reflect that. So are you talking about your own learning? Are you talking about and willing to step into more controversial conversations with a really open and approachable way, where you're interested in what people think rather than having to be right? Those three things, if we can focus on those, will help to lift that mindset. And you know, what we go around with, what do we know from the neuroscience? We absolutely know that emotions are contagious, and so when we walk in with a very fixed view, that's what is going to spread. Either that or a real push up against it, where people aren't going to be happy with us. So I often talk about these, that when there's a fixed mindset, we get a whole lot of DBJs, deny, blame, justifies. I didn't do that. You know, I can't do that with my kids. It's too hard. You didn't give me the information in time. I was late because, you know, the bunny rabbit ate my keys. All the DBJs in the world come out of people's heads when we're pushing them out of their comfort zone. So our ability to keep that space where it's learning, it's okay, we can do this together, encourages us to have this sort of language. This is growth mindset language. It's a learner language, whereas the DBJs, the deny, blames, justifies, are victim and reactive. So I tend to really code teams when I work with them and listen around what's the meta language. So you can take out the word leadership if you're not in leadership. I do believe that any adult in a school is a leader, and so our kids respond to this. You know, what is it that they can hear in our language? Do they hear the DBJs when they come to us with a challenge where we might shut them down or hand pass it or not deal with it, or do they hear our proactivity? As a download, I've got this. This is in The Buzz, so some of you may be familiar with it, my book, The Buzz, and it's a download. A lot of schools use this in their teams. My suggestion is you never use it as an assessment on other people. It's a self-assessment, but I sort of ask people, are you a leaner or are you a learner? So do you lean against your comfort zone or are you a learner and you jump over, springboard from your comfort zone into a learning zone? So there's a few different ideas that you can look at to the left and to the right, and it's not an either or. These are sliding, so sometimes we just, you know, sometimes we just need to lean on others so that they actually take the lead on the decisions. Sometimes we just need to sit out and let other people take the lead because we're overwhelmed and we're exhausted. So I always say to people, just look for patterns. We're looking for patterns here. So do we spend more time on the left or do we spend more time on the right in the learner space? So that's, again, it's a tool you can use in your teams to have a conversation, and feel free to download it and use it how you want to. And, you know, that going back to that space of are you a ninja is really critical around mindset. Are you able to ninja people when they're stuck in their DBJ and get them out? So that we have a mindset of learning, even when we're tired, it's okay, this is all right, we can do this together, this is hard work, and we're stuck a little bit in, you know, good old James Nottingham's learning pit. But let's be okay with that, and how do we support each other to be there? Because it's messy, but we're getting somewhere. As a team, here's an example of a leadership team that wanted to be really clear about what they stand for. It helps mindset. If you're really clear about what's your purpose as a team, this was their purpose. This was a very high functioning school, but they wanted to go back to basics and really create a leadership purpose, and be very clear about what their team commitment to each other was. They wanted to be restless. They didn't want to be just plodding along. They wanted to push things. And they wanted to have some really strong guiding principles. So this came out of a couple of days' work that we did, and it's driven their work now for a number of years. This part was their vision and their focus area for that year of what they wanted to work on. So mindset, critical that we do some work on that. I'm going to go a bit faster through these two. The moments, the compelling environment. Have a think about the energy and the temperature of the teams. You know, down the bottom of the list, we've got transactional interactions. When we're heading up towards the top, it's about co-creation and it's about stimulating, and you know, it's dynamic. For a lot of you that are in the controversy stage, I'm going to encourage you to get out ways of having good debate, and that are not scary for people. First up, make sure that there's some fun in there, some joy and connection in your meetings. You know, when you get together, it helps to change mindset. And from a neuroscience perspective, people are getting oxytocin, and so it helps the prefrontal cortex connect. So the things that trauma-informed education helps us with kids, it also helps us with adults who, at the end of the day, are a bit exhausted. So this is from Daniel Pink, who wrote the great book, When. And if you look at this, have a look when enjoyment levels, warming to each other and happiness dip about the time that we are having our meetings at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we have to work at creating these environments where people are coming together in a way that's helping to connect the work, connect the learning. Otherwise, it gets all too much and people atrophy, they dry out, they become desiccated, and they come to meetings with dread rather than purposeful, engaged, enjoying what they're doing and getting a lot out of it for their teaching and their interactions with their students. Here's something you can just throw through your agendas. Again, I'd really encourage you to listen to Donna's webinar from August. It's got a lot of great ideas. This one I use with agendas, say on staff meetings, where you go, do we have a whole heap of just heads talking? So where is it in this agenda that we need to make some decisions and people are clear on that, it's on the agenda? Where is it that it's just information? Where is it that it's consultation and then it'll go maybe to the leadership or it'll go to consultative group or whatever your structure is? And when is it that we need to explore? So I believe in collaboration. E has to be a lot bigger than it is right now. So too much I in most agendas. And a lot of schools that are right up the top of community collaboration are really clear that the administrivia is as small as possible. All right, and the way that I encourage you to explore is to use visuals. This was a secondary school imagining their new house system, which they wanted to be very community-based. All different groups made metaphors. They came out with what are the strong principles that we're coming up with. Hand people texters, you know, let's get rid of just the talk and create some interactivity. This again, was that same workshop I showed you earlier, where people unpacked the high-impact teaching strategies, and they did some metaphors, and they did some what does it look like in practice, and they had great conversations around some evidence base of what does the evidence say about this teaching strategy, what do we believe as educators, and it takes away the personal when people are sitting around and they're talking with each other. So if you're in controversy and confusion, have some of this stuff happen. Get some templates out and just get people mixed up and being purposeful about what you're trying to talk about. And last piece of the buzz is, are we having the authentic dialogue? So, and I need to finish up soon because it's almost time for you guys to all head off to other things. But what comes out of our mouths, gee, it's so important, isn't it? Down the bottom, you know, judgment, transaction, silos, being right. When we're really being transformational, we're sharing and discovering together, we're curious, we're having deep dialogue. And it's a skill that I think we need to teach each other, and we need to teach ourselves. How do we actually do that? I think this is so important that we're curious. Are we asking questions of ourselves and each other about what we think? How are we posing good, curious questions, provocations when we come together to collaborate? You know, what we know is that the more we get to know something, the less our curiosity is. And so this is a really good one to put up and go, how do we stay in a state of curiosity? Because then we can be having conversations about things that we want to do because we're being bold. And we start to challenge our assumptions. I really believe all our major goals that we have in schools, we should be saying, okay, what are our assumptions that sit underneath this, and pull them right apart. And ask the kids what they believe. What do we assume about kids? How often do we make assumptions about what our students can do? Majorly. And then as the people driving this, gee, we've got to make sure we don't get defensive when people challenge assumptions. And I think in controversy stage and in confusion stage, sometimes we shut that down because we think, oh, that's going to be too hard to go near, So, I often say to educators, when someone challenges your assumptions or challenges you, stop, just pause, feel the defensiveness and see if you can make it smaller by asking a curious question, by just saying, so can you tell me more about that? Because I see it really differently and I'm interested in how you see it. We step in rather than stepping out. So those three areas, the mind, the moment and the mouth, would be what I would encourage you to have a good look at. And I'm going to suggest that should you wish to, you can absolutely do the buzz diagnostic. So, you know, it's going to be available for you as part of the Real Schools crew. What it does is it gets people to talk about where they see their mindset, where they see their environment, where they see their dialogue, and then where is it that they see the school's environment, mindset and dialogue as well. So, and it gives you some really good data to be able to have a look at. I'm currently looking at one at the moment where people have got internally feel that they've got really strong mindset and good dialogue, and yet when it comes to the school, there's high levels of distrust, really high levels of distrust. So it's about how do we arm them with having the dialogue that creates safety rather than conflict. So it gives you a bit of a springboard from where to go to. So I'm going to finish up now and I'm going to jump. You will find that there's some stuff in the slide deck on trust. You will be able to have a look at that. What I might do is I'm going to send part of Glue, which is my second book, to Chris so you can download that as well. But this diagnostic report is available. You can just do it by yourself as an individual if you like, but if you want the school-wide report, just email me at tracy@tracyezard.com, and Susie, my business manager, or actually email Susie at tracyezard.com. She will set up a special code for your teaching staff and education support staff to do the diagnostic. If you want to get the buzz or glue, you can get a 20% discount. Just put in Real Schools in the on the website. And I hope that I've been able to give you some things to think about for the future in terms of your collaborative culture. I'm hoping that you have got some stuff to remember in terms of the fact that collaboration is learning out loud. So how do we learn to do this better? Because it's something we were never really trained up to do. So happy to talk to you further. Shoot me an email if you like. Thanks again to Adam when he's listening to this. I should do a code word to see if he listens right to the end. Thanks, Real School people. I love that you're out there, and I love the work that you're doing with Real Schools. It's fabulous stuff. So thank you very much. Have a great end to the year.